Boot Surge 2, Border Generations 1, and who else? Let me see. And Nintendo Games SNES. Of course. Thank you very much, guys, for subscribing to our channel. If you guys want a shout out, just don't forget to follow us, subscribe to our channel, like our video, and comment on the videos as well. Here we go. This is God of War digital comic number 0. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right, let's do this. Let's do it. It's gonna be fun. Don't forget to give us a like on the video. Right, so here we go. Let's go to a live scene, and here we go, guys. Enjoy it. I'm not gonna talk, so you guys can actually enjoy it. Amazing, isn't it, guys? Amazing. That is awesome. All right, guys. So see you guys on the next video, on the next issue. That will be number 1. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like our video, comment on the video if you guys would like to see part 1, of course, of God of War, the next issue of God of War. Comment, see if you guys like it. All right. But here we go. We're just gonna leave you with some commentary, live commentary of the creators of God of War, that comic. All right, guys. So here we go. This is it.
All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Aaron Kaufman. I'm the senior community strategist here at Santa Monica Studio, and I am joined today by our game director, Corey Barlog.
Hello, everyone.
And artist of the God of War comic series, Tony Parker, and author Chris Robertson. How you guys doing?
Doing well, you?
Awesome. So I know you guys are at home, cozying up warm in Portland. Corey and I are here. Corey's with the team finishing the game, though people are going to be listening to this after the game is done, hopefully.
Is it warm in Portland?
No.
No.
So, hey, why don't we just do a quick round of introductions here. We'll start with you, Chris. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself, your history, what you've worked on?
Sure. Previous to breaking to comics, I was a science fiction fantasy novelist. Wrote a bunch of novels and short stories. I started working in comics about almost 10 years ago, probably best known for co-creating the iZombie comic with Mike Allred that was the inspiration for the TV show on CW. And these days, I largely work with Mike Mignola on various Hellboy-related titles, Hellboy and the BPRD, Witchfinder, things like that. But I've also done some Aliens work and other titles for Dark Horse.
That's awesome. Are you a fan of Electric Dreams? I know you've been you helped out on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Both of you guys did.
Yeah, I actually wrote a prequel to that for Boom Studios a million years ago.
Oh, you did Dust to Dust?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. That was me.
Did you guys even know that you both worked on Electric Dreams kind of inadvertently together?
This is the first. Yeah, surprise.
It's a small world.
Very small world.
Yeah, Chris, I know you helped write in the prequel, and Tony, you did the artwork for the actual comic series, the post prequel, so to speak. Seems like it's aligned in the stars. You guys came to work together on God of War.
It was fate.
Just like Kratos is.
There you go.
Tony, so I know you've done some work in comics in the gaming industry and elsewhere. Why don't you tell us a little about your history?
I actually have my work in the industry. I used to do a lot of role-playing games, splat book work. Where it's like shows a picture of an orc there in the corner of the page. I've been like 150 of those books. I've done 130 CCG cards. I've done a lot of Warhammer stuff, Fantasy and 40K, and that actually got me into comics, which was always my end goal. It's taken the long way around. And with that, I did some Warhammer stuff. And then with Boom Studios, I got into probably one of my best known projects where we did a word-for-word adaptation of Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. And for those who aren't familiar with that, that's the base, the approximate base material for the movie Blade Runner. And so for that, that was 2 years. It was a wonderful experience. And since then, I've worked on a lot of licensed work, like I've done Conan, I've done Godzilla, I did a whole lot of Mass Effect. Also, I know I'm missing stuff in there as well, but I've done those. And then I've done 2 creative properties. I was lucky enough to do This Damn Band, a rock and roll supernatural rock and roll supernatural documentary thriller about a band that may have sold its soul to the devil with Paul Cornell. And then I did Mayday with the always wonderful Alex DeCampi, which is a early 70s pulp indie grindhouse style story. Neither are for kids, but they're both wonderful.
They do sound kid friendly.
It's a weird balance. And I've done work for Nike and the Phoenix Suns, and you work a lot of weird places when you do stuff like this. And I've loved every moment of it. And now I'm actually quite ecstatic to be working with the God of War team. So
oh, cool.
That's kind of brings me up to here.
It's crazy. Like, you both started out in something else and kind of ended up in comics. That sort of transition point, Tell me about that. I'm very, very curious. Like Chris, when you went from going from novels to working at comics, what was that first gig? And how did it come about?
Well, comics was the job I wanted to get, and it's just as a writer, it's extraordinarily hard to get those jobs. If you can't write and draw your own stuff, it's hard to prove you know what you're doing. So I basically had to establish my bona fides by going off and having an entire career as a novelist before I could get any of the comics editors to pay attention to what I was pitching them. And then it ended up being a friend of mine opened the door for me. My Bill Willingham, who did a book called Fables, basically offered me a fill-in gig, and I got to write one issue of one of his books. And then that led to me having conversations with the editor, which led to me getting other work. And then this is what I do for a living now.
So connections with people? You're actually knowing somebody who said, hey, come in, write one thing, and that kind of one thing leads to another.
Yeah, so I was an 18-year overnight success.
So is it the same way from an art perspective? Like,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you look at any of the artists out there, with rare exception, it's never everyone loves like that Jim Lee. I did 3 issues, I'm doing the X-Men, even though I did a whole lot of Alpha Flight. It's a big thing where, I mean, you got to prove that they can make money off of you. And it sounds horrible, but it's a business, and a business I love, but you still got to prove that you're worth the investment. And for me, it was, it was around 150 different books, RPG not illustrations, but books I worked on.
wow.
So hundreds, if not thousands, of illustrations to show I could do it. And from there, it was working with Games Workshop and working in that field. And from there, it went over to Boom, where, hey, Boom Studios, I love comics. I've always wanted to do this. Too bad you don't do any more Warhammer comics. Oh, no, we do. What? Yeah, I'm licensed, I'm approved with Games Workshop, and I can do all this stuff. Well, I was almost hired on the spot.
Oh, wow.
Which is incredibly rare for that. And so I was able to do some work with them with that, and able to parlay that out to it. But no, my end goal, and side note, I actually have degrees in criminal justice and psychology. I graduated with honors with those.
Really?
And,
I mean, I would totally expect that from a comic book artist.
Oh, yeah. Almost every comic artist and writer, it's that, again, like that Doctor Who thing. They're taking the long way around.
Yeah.
And so we've all got here because I think it's easier for artists than it is for writers to, I'd say, we're break in but get published. Because nothing else, we can put pinups on different websites or web pages, and people can see it, and you can marketability that way.
True.
Much harder for writers to put up short stories and people actually take the time to read them.
Yeah,
So
there's not really the writer equivalent of a pinup, huh? Check out these 3 words. Nice.
Or check out this one-page short story. It's a much harder push.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, here, that's a really pretty picture. I can look at it in 3 seconds.
Huh.
I'm very lucky, but I've been doing it ever since, and loved every minute of it.
How has comics changed, you think, over the last, even 10 years?
Oh, Chris, if you want to go.
Well, I think comics creatively has never been healthier than it is now. There's more different kinds of comics coming out, more types of stories, more types of genre for any conceivable audience. You know, for a long time it was kind of relegated to entertainment for kids, and then for people who continue to like the things they liked as kids as they got older. But now there's an unending supply of fantastic new books, either as individual comic books or as graphic novels or trades or web comics, just constantly coming out. It's almost impossible to keep up with all the good stuff. So it's a good place to be in. It's hard to make money doing it, but as a reader, it's pretty great.
I'd put this as a new golden age of comics, actually, because while, yes, we look at the 50s and 40s, there were some amazing illustrators like Frank Frazetta and some great writers that worked in that period. If you look at the overall quality that's being put out right now, because it is such a difficult market, you have to be damn good. There used to be a phrase in comics, if you want to be an artist and you want to work, you got to do 2 or 3 things right. You got to be really good, maintain all your deadlines or work fast, or be incredibly charming and personable. That's not the case anymore. You have to be really good. You have to be all 3. And you usually have to be really talented, make your deadlines, and don't say stupid things. If you,
I would be terrible in comics then.
You learn to pick your battles. But it's one of those things where there's such an incredible amount of talent out there, because there is such a great diversity in the readership and the creatorship and the subject matter. Where when I was reading comics when I was a kid, it was you had capes, and I love superheroes. But now if you walk in and you see what the incredible things that you can do, that you can read that are so incredibly well done, it is a wonderful thing for a reader to have. It's just an embarrassment of riches.
Do you guys find it's more common now that you're putting a lot more of your sort of your personal self inside of the works that you're doing? Like people's sort of desires to read books that are going a little bit deeper, digging farther in to sort of not just the human condition, but really telling stories that are, gravitating and resonating with people, as opposed to just, hey, great fight panel.
Oh, I think that's definitely the case. And I think that as it's moved away from having to fit into the confines of any particular genre to being a much more kind of open playing field. I did a spin-off of Hellboy last year called The Visitor, How and Why He Stayed, which was basically the story of this sad alien who secretly followed Hellboy around for about 60 years, falls in love, then it ends very sad. And I was just kind of writing this thing about dealing with mortality and grief and loss, and was surprised at how much it resonated with readers. Like that was one of the things that got the biggest response of anything I wrote in the last few years. And it turns out I could make people cry with a story about a sad alien, which I didn't realize was a talent I had. So, yeah.
For the art, I think there's just such a greater quality and a diversity of art, which I think is wonderful. Putting yourself into it, and a lot of it for me is whatever the script is. With that, there's expected a wider range of acting talent required to draw it, where it used to be you have your 3 angry faces, and that's all you need to draw for comics, and your girl with the pouty lips, and you're good. Now you have to be able to tell a good story is required, and for that you have to put a lot of yourself out on that page as well. But I think it's absolutely wonderful that we have the opportunity for that, where we have grown as a community to allow for that diversity.
So what did you guys do to get in the head of this book?
Well, it was funny when Dark Horse first approached me. I had just finished reading Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology. It's his kind of like his interpretation of Norse myth that came out last year. And I'd always been obsessed with Norse mythology since I was a kid. The Delaire's Book of Norse Gods and Goddesses I would check out from my elementary school library constantly, so much so that I eventually just had to buy a copy. So I already had kind of Norse stuff in my brain. And I was aware of God of War, but hadn't really played much of it. So I spent that weekend playing a bit of God of War 3, discovering I was really bad at it, and then spent like 18 hours watching other people play it on YouTube. And it was really interesting because, through the course of the original games, Kratos is kind of a one-man Ragnarok for Greek mythology. And so I was really intrigued with the idea of then taking him and transplanting him into a Norse myth-like world and seeing what would happen.
I'm a huge fan of the game. When I was approached, like, hey, Tony, how would you like to do this? I had to change my pants. Because I've played through 1, I've played through 2, I've played through 3. I've got them all. I've played through it was a hardcore. This one was like, remember when you get like those little dream cakes that just fly in your lap, like, have you heard of this? Shut up and take my money. I will do that. Oh, you're paying me for this? It's even better. Because I'm just an absolute ecstatic fan. I'm right now debating which of like the special editions I want to get, kind of thing. Because I absolutely love, and then for me, one of the biggest things is seeing like all the preview stuff for the 4, where it goes from, as much fun as I love the smashy bashy and over-the-top action and violence, which is incredibly fun in its own cathartic way. For me, realizing now he's a bit older, he's the parent, he's the father. He's got he's that old, exhausted soldier. And being a part of that, where it's not just a smashy punchy, which is incredibly fun to draw, but be able to bring out that pathos, that energy, and that emotional quality of having to deal basically PTSD demigod.
Yeah.
Just like that, I think just made it that much better.
Corey, this story of this takes place between, the end of God of War 3 and the beginning of our game in a very, very vast timeline that is sitting in your head. Tell, the fans out there a little bit about kind of the timeline of where the story takes place. Who is Kratos right now? Where is he?
So this is kind of leading up to the beginning of the game. We have like you said, we have a huge period of time where I'm leaving it as open as possible to allow us to start exploring all the different things that have gone on with him. Because you mentioned, Tony, the PTSD, and there is a lot of that, like with Kratos after having left Greece. Spoilers to anyone out there who doesn't know this, but having sort of destroyed the entire pantheon of gods, he is spared, and spared really makes it seem like it was a good thing. And honestly, he was sort of denied death. He's searched for that his entire career, if you will, as a demigod and Spartan, and has been denied it all along. So he's kind of this cursed warrior like Cain from Kung Fu wandering the earth. And he wanders for a long period of time. And in a parallel to either, the sort of post-trauma or even kind of like hitting rock bottom as an alcoholic, right? Like to me, that period of time between God of War 3 and the beginning of this Norse era is him truly finding what rock bottom feels like, truly understanding that what he believes he wants is to be away from everybody. He wants isolation. He needs to get away from people because people have brought him nothing but misery. And in that period, he kind of discovers a lot about himself. And during the comic, we're actually in the Norse lands. We're actually building up towards the time period right at the beginning of the game. And you're getting to experience the sort of dynamic and the relationship between Kratos and Atreus. You're getting to see a bit of the prehistory, I guess, of Kratos. But I like the fact that we have this massive window to explore as well for what happened between these two periods of time, because everybody still strangely believes that, he destroyed the whole world. And the reality of the way that most mythologies work is these are the creation stories of various cultures, which kind of exist at the beginning of time at the cultures all around the world, right? So cultures in sort of the South America, cultures in sort of Southern Europe and Northern Europe, and even North America. These are all kind of stories that they're telling at the beginning of their worlds, and their worlds are their worlds. So their area really feels like that is the entire world. The world serpent inside of Norse mythology is said to go around the entire world, but it really is encircling what their world is until the Viking era, which is actually many, many, many hundreds of years after the story that we're telling in God of War. They were not as seafaring, so they were not really stretching out as much and exploring, but a lot of the gods, they could connect. So there is actually interesting references in Greek mythology about how certain Norse gods had made connections.
Chris, what was the biggest challenge for you in writing a specific moment in time related to Kratos battling his rage, at this point in the timeline?
Well, I was fortunate enough to get a couple of meaty documents sent over from you guys, kind of outlining roughly what goes on in that span between the previous game and this, and a little bit about what is going on in Kratos' head at this point. But it wasn't until somebody used the analogy of recovering alcoholic, ordering a drink and sitting in a bar staring at it to prove that he didn't need to drink it. Then it clicked for me. I understood what he was doing. And then I understood like what our story needed to be. It needed to be him basically going out and trying not to get angry, putting himself in a situation where by all rights he would lose control and then try to maintain control. And that really informed both this Zero issue and ultimately where we're going to end up going in the next 4 issues.
Everybody who's listening to this right now has probably read it or gotten to the end of it, and in the end, he fails. And from a storyline perspective, not really spoiling where this comic goes next, I think for you and Corey, like, why is it important to his character this moment that he fails?
Well, for me, it was that, because I'm a parent, and here's Kratos with a son, and in one of those documents I was sent over, one of the conversations that we had, there was this note about Kratos not wanting his son to follow in his footsteps, not wanting Atreus to be the kind of person, the kind of man he was. And so he needs to start that arc at a place where he's not there yet. He's not ready to embrace his parenthood entirely because he's not ready to be the person that he thinks he needs to be, it seemed like. And also, if you do this story with him conquering his rage, there's not a whole lot of place to go after that. I mean, emotionally and psychologically, that was where the really interesting stuff to me was. So he kind of had to lose this time out, so we'd have somewhere to go from here.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, I always quote that Pixar stuff where they're talking about the 20 rules of storytelling, and it's like all the animators and writers had collected over the duration of time that they've been working, all these kind of little bits of information that they picked up. And the number one thing on that list is this idea that you never root for the hero because they win. You root for the hero because they lose and they get back up, right? And it's so, I mean, it's not only is it just completely human, but it's also like we go through that so much in our lives. And I think even as parents, like all you do is fail as a parent, like constantly, because there's literally, I haven't done anything right, any of the parenting things. And then, 1 out of, 5 months, one choice out of 5 months, I do something right. And I'm like, yes, it's a big victory. And that victory feels amazing because of all the failures that preceded that. And I think the interesting thing about Kratos is this concept of he's had 10 years, 8 games of, really intense character growth towards being this bastard, right? This anti-hero. And he's going to need a long period of time to kind of get to a point where he has any sort of confident, good decision making, right? Like, I think that's a thing you got to earn. And I love the idea that you're rooting for him, not because he's succeeding, but because he's failing and he realizes he's got to keep trying no matter how hard it is. You just got to keep pushing forward and trying.
So Tony, let's talk about the artwork, related to this side of Kratos, where we're getting a real good look at, a solemn Kratos and then a Kratos who's about to start trying to control his rage. So Tony, there's a lot of different emotions that are conveyed in these first 4 panels. What were the challenges and what was inspiring to you to kick this off?
Well, for me, the inspiration was the character itself, because he is such, I don't want to say damaged character, but such a, I will go damage actually, because he's got so much more that he has to deal with, so much to process. So there's such a wide range of emotion that allows with it. But it was really just incredibly fun. It was just really one fun thing. Just have that subtle setting, almost like a Japanese decompressed storytelling, where you can just kind of ease into it, where it's not the automatic him jumping in. It allows for a story built into it, so you can absorb into the character. And for me, it was just.
Yeah, it's such a cool isolation that you got on this as well. This idea of it's like we're holding back on a lot of the color, the snow kind of washing a lot of stuff out, and it really is just like very clean, very simple. Him by himself.
It wasn't me, so that was, I think, Geist did. Hopefully we can post up who the colorist was for that, but it looks like they did a good job. But I did the line art for it, so I was the storytelling and the line art. But I want to make sure that I'm not taking any credit from someone else with that. So, but he did a beautiful job really allowing those reds to pop out, so that bright rage still is fiery in the cool snow of everything else.
Yeah, but even that detail in the first panel of really kind of, it's just a very interesting sense of isolation. So much about the game is about him being separated from everyone, and just like being able to start it out in that sense of like, wow, he's not even connected at this point to his kid. It feels even that he's not connected to the world.
And actually, I don't know, I'm jumping ahead on this, but the last page there, where he's quote unquote victorious, that's actually my favorite part of it, because if you look at I try to put his body position. So it's not victory, he's lost. And he knows it. Where it would be any other story, action situation like this, almost any other person, it would be a grand victory for what he's done with this. For him, it's a failure, because he was maintained the rage. And for me, it was those moments. Hopefully I didn't jump ahead, but I just felt it kind of balanced in there. But I loved how Chris allowed me to put that opportunity in there to show that great, and I pulled it back so you have just that silhouette, the feel of just an absolute abject defeat, which for me was incredibly fun to draw.
It's great too, because you think about it, in the previous games, that was, you're right, that victory point. That is the sort of action shot that shows like, check it out, he's really badass, he's killed all these people standing on these bodies, but but to represent the idea that, no, actually, that is the failed point,
And
right? He looks badass, and that is where he failed in his task.
and even the composition of it, I try to put it where he's standing on the hill, but he's standing alone. Everything else is pulled away and isolated. Even the landscape around him is receding away from him. It's pulling away. The characters, as they're strewn around, are pulled away from him. So everything about it is, it's like they know he's lost as well. We're on a subconscious, on a compositional level, where everything has that pull, where he has that isolation. And I think that was just a wonderful shot for me to. Hopefully, I didn't steal from someone else, because I had fun with it.
Chris, Kratos is a man who can be short on words, which sometimes can make it challenging, to tell a story, especially in, the first few lines here, I search for a challenge. Just as a writer, to convey those emotions and find the perfect word for every line. How challenging was that for you, and how did you feel about that?
Well, it was definitely a challenge at the outset to figure out how are we going to convey the emotional information beyond just what you can see. Like, so there was debate initially as to whether there would be, should we have some sort of narrative captions? Because in the previous games there'd been the conceit of someone telling this story after the fact. So played around with that idea, but pretty quickly we settled on the idea of first-person narrative captions. And then, yeah, as a guy who is pretty stoic and whose dialogue is usually, right before and during fights, it was kind of it was a little difficult to capture his voice. But luckily, you guys sent over a number of pages of the script of the game, and that really helped me kind of focus in on, okay, what are the rhythms and cadences of this guy's voice, and what are the least number of words we can use to convey what he's thinking and feeling in the moment.
So what was harder, Corey's feedback or actually writing this?
No, the feedback was immensely helpful. I mean, with a situation like this, particularly, creating something out of whole cloth, that's one thing, but coming in to someone else's sandbox, basically, I like being given as much direction and restriction as possible, because then that lets me know where are the creative ways you can kind of build a story around this. Whereas just staring at a blank page is pretty daunting. So no, that was all very, very appreciated.
That was a really difficult task for us on every single one of the games too. Like trying to figure out how to get Kratos to emote and communicate, but still stay in the voice of him. I think even now, like we're on the eighth or ninth game, and man, it's still hard. And we still struggle with it. The beginning of this game, changing him to being a dad that's more present. We had times where the team was telling us, man, it's depressing playing this game right now. It's like a child abuse simulator. And then we're like, oh, okay, so he's too stern with the kid. All right. So then we correct and come back, and he's like, oh, he's terrible. He's like Qui-Gon Jinn. He's just so like calm and peaceful and just like, very zen. And it's like, all right, cool. So we overcorrected that way, and just kind of trying to find that middle ground to where he can actually communicate, but also still stay true to, who he is. And we kind of ended up in this situation where he kind of makes a sound like a grunt, and then we put in sort of parentheticals what it really means. And we ended up with like I'm not kidding, like 50 or 100 different grunts that meant different things. So the Kratos actor is literally like, and it really is conveying a completely different context of how he's responding to people. So it's got to be even harder, I think, when you're working simply just in the words to be able to convey that. But you've done a beautiful job so far.
Well, luckily, I can lean on Tony pretty hard to convey a lot of that information visually, both in terms of the way a panel is composed, like, is the character small and isolated, or menacing, and then also just in terms of the acting, the facial expression and postures and things like that. So, yes, thankfully, you can.
What's your guys' process back and forth? Like when you get the script, do you guys get on the phone, chat about like some ideas, throw some emails back and forth? How's that work?
It's mostly mediated through the editor, through Spencer Cushing, who's our editor.
Yeah.
So Tony, have we talked in directly about this? I think we talked in person once or twice about it.
Mostly just, hey, you're working on this too, and that's about it. So,
Yeah.
And you're my neighbor.
Yeah.
You're down the road. But no, it's again, we get it from editorial, and sorry for jumping in, but for me, it's I get a script, and thankfully he gives me a great script to work with. So there's very little ambiguity about it. There's no like, what's going on here? Both everyone down at your studio over at Spencer, everyone at Dark Horse is, by the time he gets to me, all that's been solved. So I just have to go in and focus on the fun part of telling the story. And I'm given a wonderful script where I can look at it and everything fits out perfectly. I can see where the pacing is for everything, so everything's equally balanced out. And I work on the subtle nuances of how the panels are laid out and how the different, like how much of an expression do I want to zoom in or pull back. And they've been really, some comic scripts will tell you this is 4 panels and this panel is a quarter of the page or half a page. They'll go every single little thing. And with this script, it's much looser with that, where it's panels 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what's said. Here's what happens. And I'm ecstatic that they trusted me enough with it, where I can go and do the layout. Then I'll send that layout back, and that'll go back to Spencer and Dark Horse, and they'll look at it. Does it make sense? Okay, it makes sense. They'll send it down to Santa Monica Studios, and you'll look at like, this is great or this is crap, fix this, and which has been more the great than the crap, so I appreciate it, but I also greatly appreciate the crap parts as well. And then goes from there to I do everything in a loose pencil, then a type pencil at full size, then I ink it, and by each one of those has an approval stage to make sure that we're exactly where we need to go. And I want a side note here. Thank you to everyone at Santa Monica Studios for your patience with me getting Kratos' face. Yes, I will admit, it took me a little while to wrap my head around it, and they sent me all sorts of wonderful reference on it, to the point where I've actually, the next year, it took me to get like the new little action figure that came out. So it's, I already got it. I picked it up on Amazon.
It took us the same amount of time. It took the first year we rebuilt his face over and over again, going, why isn't it looking right? We made Kratos. How do we not get it right? It's hard.
And I appreciate your patience with it. And tell the other people, all the men and women down there, I really appreciate it, because it's your sandbox. I've been here at that point, it was a couple of weeks. You've been there for a couple of years, and here I am just figuring baby.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I really want to make sure that I really appreciate it. But that was really making sure that we get it right for everybody. Because I'm a fan, I want to make sure everything's right as well, because it throws us all off where that's not Kratos, that's a guy with a beard. Not quite.
Yeah.
So we'll always go through with that. There's always a bunch of back and forth with the process there, but always making sure that we're going for whatever the best possible product is.
Sort of on that note, then, maybe it is this biggest challenge on this thing so far. The hardest point for you.
For me, it was the faces.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
I mean, for me, yeah, probably it was the cracking the narrative captions, as we said, because anytime that he's interacting with another character, I feel like I know who this guy is. I know how this situation is going to go down. We carried over the conceit that basically Kratos doesn't speak the same language as nearly anybody he encounters. So Atreus has to translate for him, and if Atreus isn't there, it's just gibberish to him. So it's actually, they're saying things. If anybody wants to track down what that rune font is, you can translate it. There's no great mysteries in there, but you can usually tell from context what's going on, what it is they're trying to communicate to him. But yeah, that part was easy. His internal monologue was difficult, but yeah.
Was there sort of a great aha moment for you, Tony, when you figured out the face?
No, I'm still working at it.
It's still like a constant undertaking.
I want to get it right. It's one of those things where I'm having the hardest part with his beard. Of all things, it's the eyes are okay because he's got that deep saw, and I can't get any sleep PTSD. Dark circles under the eyes.
Yeah. Nose
is up. It's very sharp, straightforward. Maybe it's because I can't physically grow a beard. I just never could. Puberty only hit the voice, and that's it. No face. I shave out of principle, so maybe it's a jealousy thing. But it's one of those things where cracking that beard, I'm getting closer on it.
He could shave in issue 2 and then grow it back in issue 3.
Right.
Just to make it easier on Tony for a moment.
I tried. They said no. It doesn't match the IP. But no, that's the one thing I'm still getting with. Everything else, The good thing is I'm not as big as he is, but I'm a larger guy. So therefore reference is easy for a lot of the figure stuff. Now I figured out I just got to go through and take the photo reference. It's for the readers, I'm about 6 foot 225. And I do a lot of weightlifting and those like obstacle races. So I'm in pretty decent shape. No Kratos,
Right.
but still.
Kratos is like what, like 7 feet, 300 pounds? I don't know. It's insane.
Yeah, no, I can fit on my bed.
Yeah.
No, it's one of those things where I'm approximate enough. All I have to do is shrink my head down, and it's close enough. But getting that head and especially that beard,
Yeah.
when you get at weird angles, that gets me every time.
Crazy.
So thank you for your patience.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
One of the interesting parts of developing this comic was setting an action scene for a man who's trying to control his rage. Tony, on the art side with these, there's kind of like an A and a B to these. There's the A where he's trying to control, and there's the B where he's just unleashing. How did you get the motion for these and the reference and figure out how to depict these scenes for something that's such a hallmark of the God of War franchise?
I just try to keep the page composition as flowing as much as possible, where there is no stops. Because anytime he's talking or he's reflecting or he's having conversations where it's calm, I try to keep him as a very stable, solitary-based figure, where he's standing on the ground, 2 feet flat, he's sitting down, everything is over center of mass. When he's in action, he's constantly kinetic, he's constantly moving. So he's moving, the wolves are moving, everything is off kilter. I try with the zero issue, I've got some more stable page layout, but as it progresses, the page layouts will get much more dynamic with it to really allow for that greater flow. But I was really trying to make sure that whenever he's in action, he's in action. Everything is off kilter, off base, or off center.
And Chris, is it important to you as a writer to kind of leave that open-ended for the artist? I mean, do you prefer to take a step back and kind of just give very basic cliff notes?
Oh, definitely. Some writers do include a lot of kind of stage direction, but I know that any artist I'm working with is better at that piece of it than I am. So what I'm providing is kind of a bare amount of description to act as context. Like here's the vital information that's happening in the scene. You can figure out the best way to stage it. So in a situation like this, it's like, okay, there's 3 wolves, they're doing this and this from panel to panel, and then in terms of things like how to arrange a panel or how to compose the page, I leave that entirely up to the artist. That's their bailiwick, not mine. Though I do have to come up with sound effects, which is often kind of the hardest part of my day, is figuring out what does this animal sound like when they're mad, or what does this thing sound like if it hits another thing.
How do you do that?
I sometimes I will listen to. You can find anything on the internet. So you can find a video of an animal making a sound and listen to it, and then I'll just try to render that phonetically, or just stand in my office and make weird noises to try to figure out how best I would render that phonetically.
What is your favorite sound effect you put in this book?
I always like the ones. It's I think, having grown up on the Adam West Batman, I like the sound effect that's just a word. So I think on the previous page here you have snap. On this page. Yeah, so it's kind of onomatopoetic, but it's also just a word. Yeah. So I think there's something about that feels very appropriate in comics. Maybe again because of Adam West.
Yeah.
Well, if it makes you feeling better, I will usually do that. Whatever expression that person, if I'm drawing this expression, I involuntarily will do that expression as well.
Oh, really?
So whatever it may be, I do that. But actually, if you can pull back to page 7 there, I want to, like what I was talking about earlier with action, because page 7, where if you look at Kratos, he's off balance from the entire page. He's right, left, right, everything is swirling. But you get that last panel where he's trying to pose that it does not control me.
Yeah.
He's balanced. He's dead center there.
So he's cycling
shows that
and then centering. Yeah.
Right in the middle there. So it's something I deal with that. But was really again, love the game. But when he's doing action with the games, they do a wonderful job with camera control, where it's really showing a really dynamic camera when you're fighting. And I really want to help give respect to that as well.
Yeah, these are great shots.
Thank you.
Corey, in this story, Kratos is still kind of coddling Atreus and protecting him and trying to keep him in the darkness, away from the dangers in the forest. Who is Kratos right now, and who is Atreus? Where are these two characters in their lives at this point?
They are familiar strangers. He is the awkward, that scene in Terminator 2 Judgment Day when John Connor's trying to teach the Terminator how to do a high five, and he's like super awkward and doesn't understand any of that. For me, that resonates as far as to where Kratos is at. Like fatherhood is such a distant, foggy memory for him. And while he looks at his son as this sort of potential for a better tomorrow, he is this like, I know I cannot keep doing the same crap that I've been doing, but I also am kind of, far removed from truly understanding how I can do any of these things. So he continues to struggle. I mean, through the duration of the game, he is going from that starting point of, I am not ready to actually undergo the transformation I need to make, but I'm sort of forced in the situation. What he's doing in sort of the pre-time, in the time of the book, is really stalling, trying to avoid some of the responsibility because he's working on himself, right? He's and not in a selfish way, but in a way of like, look, I need to know that I can control myself before I can actually pass any useful information on to this kid, right? And it's interesting because it builds up this resentment in the kid. His son is basically looking at him like, you don't like me, right? Like you're avoiding me. He's always out, as they say, hunting. But the reality is he's out doing this. He's out trying to figure out what is the aha moment for him to figure out, how do I control this? Because rage is at least in my mind, rage is this sort of this combination of the human and the god being contained in a single vessel. It is the side effect of both the unique individuals who Kratos was as a human, and then kind of what Zeus gave to him and making him who he is. And this side effect of being a god and a human is this kind of uncontrollable rage, right? And he really does look at this thing as a disease his dad gave him, and then a disease he's passing on to his kid, right? And we play a lot with that in the game, and I think it's kind of this nice alluding to with this sense of he's just distant, right? And he struggles with trying to understand things. I love the idea that in the book, you cannot understand what other people are saying to you, right? That feeling of when Atreus isn't there, Atreus is the voice, right? And as the reader, as the player, you are experiencing life as Kratos, then you don't understand what they're saying, and you have to start perceiving what's going on in that situation, what is happening. And it makes him probably a bit uncomfortable to realize that, his son is a necessary part of his understanding of the world, right? It's something that I think maybe on the surface, maybe he thinks he understands that, but I think deep down it is a long, long journey for him to really understand. There's a give and take, a power control for both of them, right? Being strong isn't the only thing in life.
Chris, what was it like for you as a father writing the lines for Atreus in this story?
I kind of had to go, it's almost like Bizarro World approach. Like, what would I not want to do? As a parent, like what would be the wrong impulse to do? Like understanding what motivates him, and as the next 4 issues kind of unfold, like he's going to be put in that situation more and more. And yeah, so I know my dark moments, like if I'm having, let's say, a stressful or bad day, there's always the temptation, if there's the slightest bit of annoyance, you don't want to like snap, you don't want to take that out on the kid. You don't want to like even be gruff or snap at a child, because they'll just think it's about them, right? They don't see a larger context. So yeah, his only and every interaction with his son is kind of the wrong choice. Is the one that is not going to be helping the kid. But I completely understood why he would be in that place, why he would be the one to make that decision. Yeah. I just want him to give his kid a hug, but that's not going to work as a story.
But when he does, like, that's an amazing moment, right? That's sort of like
Yeah.
long earned. It's funny that like he does make all the wrong choices, right? He continues to make these wrong choices, but we can sort of relate to some of those because either we've been tempted or we've accidentally, we've had that moment of like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I would have been more understanding at that moment. And I think it's fascinating to see him struggle with that and to actually try to imagine yourself and actually empathizing and rooting for somebody that while you can enjoy Kratos from the previous games, he was never somebody you sort of rooted for and went like, you deserve this, Kratos. You deserve to kill a bunch of people for no reason or because you're really upset. But I mean, for me, I love that. I don't know if you guys have seen season 1 of Daredevil, the Netflix one, and to feel like you're rooting for Wilson Fisk, to feel like you can relate to him, to feel like you can understand and go like, man, that is kind of sad. I feel bad for him. Like, that's amazing. That is an unbelievable achievement, I think, in any kind of entertainment form, to take somebody who would traditionally be not a person you would feel bad for, and you actually genuinely have earned that moment of like, all right, man, I'm rooting for you. You struggle, right? I think that's cool.
Tony, I think two of the images that kind of, to me personally, speak, to what Corey and Chris are talking about on the final scene where Kratos is kind of standing, in front of Atreus. I think it's, he says, I venture into the woods to test myself, to face danger, and yet keep my rage under control. That image where there's like burning fire behind him, and it's almost like, I hate to say it this way, he's like almost like in about to be in an abusive state, but he's trying to control his rage from even getting angry at Atreus. Just as an artist, when you're reading that on the paper and you're figuring out how to draw this scene, and you don't want to make Kratos look like he's about to, hurt Atreus in any kind of way. How did you feel, drawing out some of those panels?
It was tough because actually one scene is not my initial layout because some of my body positions I took them the rage a bit too far, where they actually had to tone down some of the body positions because my first thought was Kratos, he is full of rage, and they're like, dude, you went too far here. You have to tone it back a bit because he's angry, but he's not angry at him, and Wade Gardner makes it look like he's angry at Atreus. So it's really that balance. But I also wanted to show there was that rage, there was that anger, there was that frustration, and it is, if it doesn't mean to happen, it's like you'd be mad, and like we talked earlier, your kid doesn't know that you're not mad at them. All they see is you're mad. And I wanted to show that even though he's not mad at Atreus, all Atreus sees in that, especially that panel, is this incredible god of incredible power, full of rage and anger, and that's what he sees. He's trapped by that. I really want to keep that silhouette in silhouette to show that even though it may not be intentional by Kratos, he is trapped by. He is surrounded. He's almost trapped by. He's surrounded by it.
You almost have a neat little victory there as well, because of the restraint. It feels like he could go to the place I think that you were originally drawing, that sense of like, wow, he's really almost angry. He's not angry at the kid, but he can't control that. And this little bit of restraint that's being shown there is kind of like, all right, it's a small victory. It's it's not, first place, but he's still getting a bit of progress, right? The Hulk isn't completely coming out at this point.
Yeah, it was a tough one because of that rage. But it was also one of the things I think down the road also have the potential payoff as well to show that hopefully he's able to quell at least some of that rage around his kid.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. I haven't played it yet, so I don't know. I'm looking forward. I'm a fan. I was like, I can do this. This is amazing, and I'm actually playing it as well. Have a greater connection this time around, obviously.
I think one last question for everybody to kind of answer in their own personal way. Chris, we'll start with you. How do you want God of War fans to feel about God of War, about Kratos and his son after they read issue 0?
Well, I think, set as it is, like pretty soon before the game, my intent was for it to be kind of like an appetizer before both the game and the comic. So you finish this, and then what happens next? Where this is where the characters are here, and then it's a nice opportunity to explore both in terms of the game and also in terms of the comics that we're doing, what follows from here and where the characters go. So hopefully enjoyed these pages and want to see what happens next, and then just go see what happens next.
Tony, what about you?
I really want the fans just have that additional immersive experience with it, because I've worked on properties before where the fans come up and it's that much more of something they love, and that's my biggest thing with them is I want them to enjoy it. I want to be a positive experience for them enjoying this. I want them to come away from it with the realization of that is so much more to the character. We're not worried about I'll go get God go do this crawl or get this little mini quest or side quest. This is solely about I love the interaction between these two people. I can actually see this where I can sit back and I can enjoy it, where it's not a cutscene I've got to either wait through or I've got to pause and go back through. I can sit back, I can pause it at different points. I can sit back, I can enjoy different elements of it. So it allows for that greater immersion into the property. As long as the people that read it, they're fans, they love it, as long as they enjoy it, that's as good as I can hope.
Yeah, I think that idea of like, I want more. I think that's my favorite part of always getting to either the last panel or usually the last sort of like splash page of a book is that like, oh yeah, I want the next one, right? It's that same weird, addictive kind of binge watching thing I have going on with TV right now. I had a difficult time following books week to week or even month to month because I wasn't patient. I would like want to get 4 or 5 of them and then kind of binge read. So this is probably a similar thing. It's like I would be wanting issue 0 and then all 4 so that I could just sit down and boom, bang through all of them. But yeah, I think that feeling of like, what's next? I think that's great.
So for those who, for all the fans that have made it to the end of this, can we tease what's next? Issue 1?
A little, I guess. I mean, basically, the central struggle for the characters and that dynamic that we set up here is the engine that drives what follows. And a very similar kind of moment with Kratos testing himself out in the woods, maybe going awry, and then having to deal with the consequences of that.
Oh, the action I'm working on right now, and just something far more I'm able to play with it a bit more. I feel a bit more comfortable with the characters, so I can take greater risks with them. And it's something where I'm just pushing the action on it that much more, and there's a bit more of a dynamic, so I can really push that storytelling. So this is a great first hit. But after this, you'll start itching and jonesing for more, just because there's so much more with the wonderful script that Chris gave me, as well as the action that everyone allows me to play with this, as well as the interpersonal dynamics. So it's just, I'm in the middle of it right now, so I'm really kind of giddy. So that's kind of what you're hearing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't say it any better, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
Well, I want to end it on 2 notes. One, by thanking Chris and Tony for an incredible job, and we are very excited to continue this series with you guys in the future. I want to give a huge shout out to Dark Horse Comics for picking our IP up and publishing and being along this journey with us, and definitely to our equal partners, colorist Dan Jackson, lettering John Rochelle, and of course the great EM Gist on the cover art, who we are very excited to see what he does next as well. So thank you once again, and we look forward to working with you guys in the future. Thank you.
Thank you guys. This was amazing.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Aaron Kaufman. I'm the senior community strategist here at Santa Monica Studio, and I am joined today by our game director, Corey Barlog.
Hello, everyone.
And artist of the God of War comic series, Tony Parker.
Here we go, guys. This was it. This actually was the interview of the with Chris Robinson, Tony Parker, of course, the creators of God of War. Well, don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to our channel, follow our channel. If you guys are on Twitch, if you guys are on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. If you guys would like us to do a shout out as well, follow those steps, subscribe, follow us, like the video, comment on the video that you want to appear on our next video, all right, as a shout out. So thank you very much, guys. See you guys in the next video. She'll do the art on the next video. The God of War art. That should be great and amazing. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching this amazing video. See you guys next time. Bye bye.